In this episode of Miata in Action, we're finding out which is better, Softtop or RF. So everybody, welcome back to this episode of Miata in Action. Now this week I am comparing my own 2016 Softtop and the MX-5 to my dad's 2017 RF. We're gonna talk about the differences between these cars, the specs of these two cars. We're gonna talk noise at high speed with the roofs up and down. Yeah, we're just gonna compare everything and then we're gonna talk about which one is better. Now let's talk specs on these two cars. Now actually these two cars are almost identical. They both have the 2-liter Skyactiv engine with about 160 horsepower. They both have the optional Bostock exhaust. They both have the optional aero kit that Mazda provides that consists of the front lip, the side skirts, the rear spoilers and the rear diffusers. Now on the inside they both are fully loaded with the infotainment system and the 9-speaker Bose sound system, but the difference is that mine still got the Recaro seat and the optional Bilstein suspension, and unfortunately the RF did not have that option anymore. Now the biggest difference between these two cars is that mine has the 6-speed manual transmission and my dad has the 6-speed automatic transmission. We're going to talk more about these transmissions and how they feel to drive in the driving segment of this comparison, but first let's talk about differences. Now first let's get into the Softtop, because the biggest difference between these two cars is of course the roof. Now the Softtop has a quite nice roof mechanism. It's a one-hand operated mechanism that is really quick in using. You can put the roof up or down in a matter of seconds. But of course that's one of the differences you already knew, because that's the biggest difference about these cars. Now this roof is the faster one of the two, but there are some other differences that do matter once you own this car. First of all, we're gonna look at these compartments. Now the first little difference you should know about while choosing between these two cars is luggage space. Now they both have the same trunk at about 130 liters, but that's not a lot. You can use all the cubby spaces you can have. Now in the Softtop you have this little cubby space, which is the same on both cars, but then you have the biggest compartment, which is what I call the glove box, because you do not have any on the passenger side. Now in the Softtop this glove box is quite deep. It goes almost all the way to my elbow, and that's a lot of usable space that you have. On the RF that's a bit different. Now another cubby space that is very handy is the one behind the seats. Now behind the two seats in the Softtop you get this little cubby space where I put my toolkit in and my first aid kit and such. Now on the RF, that's also different. Now for the last difference on the inside of the car, we're gonna look at the instrument cluster. Now the speedo and the rev counter are the same, but you have this little screen. I hope it's good to see on camera, but in the Softtop it's not fully rounded, as you can see over here. It's not fully rounded, and also it's just a white on black screen. Now in the RF there has been quite the upgrade. Now let's get into the RF. Now the RF in the RF MX-5 stands for retractable fastback, which is an automatic roof mechanism. Now this hardtop has the added benefit, of course, of not being as vulnerable to knives and keys and everything, and people just wanting to vandalize your car. So as you can see, you have this Targa style roof, as with the Softtop you have like this full open feel. Now I have to say this rear window has been removed, so the wind can go through there, but we'll see how well that fares when we start comparing sound levels between the two cars. But now what about those other differences? So now let's talk about that center console I was talking about. Now in this Softtop the center console almost went to my elbow. Now in this car it doesn't fit. It's not as deep as it is in the other car. Now this means that, for example, I can't put my Mazda documentation in here or anything else. It's just enough for a few sunglasses and that's about it. So that's quite a bummer. But that means that you already have a lot less space to put stuff away in here, and it's already a bit cramped. But what about these holes behind the seats? Now if we look over here behind the seat, this seat doesn't seem to go as far. Now I put it forward, we see there is a little cubby hole on this side, but there isn't on the other side, so you only have one of these. Now if you open this up, you will see there is a cubby hole there, but with the soft top, these cubbies are bags and they can form a bit to whatever you want to put in them, and they're also a lot deeper again, like with the center console. But yeah, there's still some space in here, but not enough to put your toolkit away. So to go back to the instrument cluster, we have the same speedo, the same rev counter, but this time it says P for park instead of the gear you're in. But then on this side, you have a totally different display. Now, what we see here is a full circle display with colors in it. And also you see a lot more information. So for example, the computer in here keeps track of your fuel consumption for every trip computer that you have. And also here you see your temperature for your water temp, but if you click on this one, it goes to oil temp. So that's a pretty handy feature for people who want to keep track of that kind of stuff, like I do. Also, you can see your sat-nav directions and such in here, and this is just really quite nice. So you have everything you need to know in here. So now that we know what the differences are, it's time to go driving. And let's start with the soft top. So everybody, now we're inside the Softtop MX-5 and we're gonna talk about how this car is to drive. Now everybody knows MX-5s are great little sports cars, and the ND generation is no different. The chassis is really nicely balanced and it's really cool to have a car with this good weight distribution between the front and rear axles. Now the Softtop MX-5 that I have here, which is my personal car, came delivered with Bilstein shocks from Mazda. Now these Bilstein shocks were awesome. They're awesome for just all-round sports suspension. They're not too stiff, they're not too soft. They were really, really good for somebody who was looking for a nice GT kind of sporty car. Now the soft suspension of the really stock suspension that you can get on the 1.5 or some of the 2-liter MX-5s is a bit on the soft side, but this is something that you need to keep in mind, that the MX-5 mostly is a platform for you to build on. Now the standard suspensions are awesome if you want a GT car or just a daily cruiser or something like that. The suspension has an awesome setup. But if you're like me and you like driving your car a bit more sporty, then you might like going for something different. Now on my car I chose to have a coilover suspension installed. Now what do these coilovers do? They got rid of the body roll in the car. Now let me explain. So the MX-5, when you try and go and drive it sporty, it will like to have a lot of body roll once you enter a corner and start pushing it. But what the thing was with, and a lot of reviewers said this as well, when the car stops rolling, it would start gripping, and you would really just get this false sense of the car can't handle it, but it can handle it actually. So a lot of people are changing out the stock suspensions for lowering springs or coilover suspensions when they want to go sporty. Now if you want to have a more track-oriented car, you will do that, but like I said before, if you want a GT car, you do not need to change this suspension setup. Now enough about suspension. I'm sorry if I'm boring you, but let's go and talk about the biggest difference between today's RF and Softtop MX-5. Now as you see, I am rolling my own gears, and that's because this car, and I think most of the MX-5 that will be sold, will have the 6-speed manual transmission, which is praised all round. This car has a really nice and nudgy gear lever. It's really fun to roll through the gears, and the gears are really short together, so if you want to go fast, you can just mash it and just go through the gears really nice and quickly, which is a really fun sensation to have while you're driving this car. Also, the steering, this is power, so this is electronic steering, which really gives nice feedback. Now, some people don't like this. I gotta say, I don't actually feel a difference from my standpoint. So the steering is really nice and manageable. You really feel what the car is doing. You really feel what the steering rack is going to do. So to conclude everything I just said, this car is really fun to drive. The standard suspension is awesome for people who want to daily drive this car or go out and do long road trips, do a kind of GT car. Therefore, this car has been set up quite nicely. The tires, the original tires, are sticky enough. All of that good stuff. So it's really cool. Now, the last thing I want to leave you with, as you have seen, my car has the optional Recaro seats. Now, for anyone wondering, not every country, or not every, like, I do not know how to say it, but not every department of Mazda is supplying these cars with Recaro seats as an option. Now, at the start of the MX-5 sale, I had the option to choose for Recaro seats, but then they went out again and they came back with the RF in some countries, and in some countries they didn't. So that's really, really annoying. Now, the best tip I can give you guys is, if you go out and want to buy an MX-5 and you have the option for this Recaro seats, buy them. They're awesome seats. They really sit nice and comfy. They're nicely finished off with the leather sides and the Alcantara centers and the red stitching. So it's a really good combination to have, and also it will give more value to your car in the long run, because there's just so little amount of Recaro editions available. So now that we know what the Softtop's all about, time to get in the RF. So guys, right now we're in the RF with the automatic transmission, and we're looking in how this will drive in comparison to my stock MX-5 with the Bilsteins. Now, I have been driving around for about 10 minutes to warm up the engine a bit, and I have to say the suspension already feels a lot better. It's really weird to feel this, because it is actually true. Mazda revised the suspension on the RF to cope with the metal roof, but they really stiffened up the car a bit. Not that it's uncomfortable, it's really soft. It's as soft as the stock or the Bilstein suspension. It's really comparable to the Bilsteins actually. And I have to say, the car does still roll a bit, but it's more controlled. It gives you more the feeling of, it gives you more an encouragement that the car can handle it, and not like this, oh, I'm rolling, and oh, now I'm stop rolling, now I'm gripping. No, it's really this controlled amount of body roll, and it really makes the car feel like it's much more able to handle the corners. So actually, this is the suspension that I would like to have had on the Softtop actually. Now, the Softtop suspension isn't bad, I'm not gonna say that, but yeah, the RF the stock suspension of the RF seems to be better from a feeling standpoint. The steering is the same, the engine is the same, and the cornering abilities are actually the same. But yeah, the RF has a bit more, yeah, it's a bit more capable feeling. Now the next big thing that I really wanted to know about the RF is the automatic transmission. Did Mazda actually create a sporty automatic transmission that can be almost like a dual clutch gearbox, like a GSG or something like that? Because those are really nice to shift manually also. But let's just start. Indeed, the car is still warming up a bit, and I have to say, if you're not on the gas, the car is a perfect cruiser. It's like a perfect dailyable kind of rhythm, just like you want from an automatic. So that's actually a very big plus point for this car. But now I have to say, you have a kick down in the gas pedal like with most cars, and the kick down, you don't feel where the kick down is going to be, so you're going to have to get used to it. But once you push through, the car will pull. So now we're coming on a bit of an intersection, going over a roundabout, and then let's give it a little bit of a push just to feel what the kick down will do. Getting off the roundabout. Oh yes. That's actually pretty nice. Now I haven't put it to the floor and I haven't let it rev as high as it should, because normally when you go to kick down it will shift between 4 and 6,000 RPM. Now I didn't do that, the car isn't warmed up yet, but I have to say it does feel like a really nice feeling that when the gearbox shifts back. You don't have a lot of delay, so the gearbox isn't slow or anything. So that's actually a pretty nice feeling. Now let's just talk about a bit of the sound differences while the engine is warming up. Let's just talk a bit of sound differences inside of the car. Now I have to say, both cars have the same exhaust system, but it seems to be more potent in this RF. I do not know how to put it, but the exhaust seems more hearable when driving this car than in comparing to the Softtop. Maybe it's because you have this metal roof which bounces the sound more than the Softtop, I don't know, but the exhaust seems to be more noticeable in the RF than it is in the Softtop. Now, in a matter of, let's say, wind noise and such, it's almost the same. I do not really hear any differences. The only thing I can maybe say is that I hear a bit more wind noise from where the window is than in the Softtop, but it's really minimal. So now I'm gonna put it in sport mode and we're gonna give it some beat. This car is fast. This other is really fast. Now, I just tried the sport mode and I have to say the sport mode, once you put it in sport, the car will already downshift one gear and go a bit higher, and it will also rev out. When you then go on the throttle, the car will rev out all the way to 6,500 RPM, which is actually a bit nuts. I don't actually do that as much in my manual car, just because, yeah, it's redline and you want to keep your engine healthy. But I have to say, it's pretty nice, and like I said, the sounds of the exhaust really are louder in this car. It's really nice to hear that, and yeah, I'm kind of jealous that the Softtop doesn't have that, but that's really cool. Now I really want to know if it's going to be as fun to pedal this car than it is going to be to let it shift for itself. Let's try this out. So we're going in D. It actually really likes it. Downshift. It's really... It is really responsive actually. I'm actually surprised, because this is a cheap kind of a lower end price sports car, and it downshifts really nicely. It nicely blips the throttle for you, You do not have any jerks or anything. This is actually really cool. This is actually really cool. I'm really liking this transmission. Now you can normally also get this transmission in the Softtop car, so if you don't like the metal roof, you can get this transmission in the other car. But I'm really surprised by the performance that it has. So, and then to get back from manual to drive, you can just keep your upshift pedal, pull in, and then it will go back to drive. Now I have to say, this automatic transmission is actually totally not bad. If you're on the fence between automatic and manual because it's your daily driver, go test out the automatic. It's actually quite sporty. I'm actually really surprised. I have driven some really bad automatics in the past, and I have to say I'm really pleasantly surprised by this. Mazda, you did real good. Real good. Now to end this video between these two cars, we're gonna do a bit of a sound comparison. Now a lot of you guys have asked me to do this and have asked me to give an honest sound representation between the Softtop roof up, roof down and the RF roof up, roof down. So that's what we're gonna try and do now. So now we're back home. We just drove the cars back to back for our driving tests and for our sound tests. And looking at the numbers of the sound test, I have to say the Softtop and the RF with the roofs up are actually almost the same. You have the same amounts of tire noise, wind noise, and also the decibel meter set this. Now before I go any further, the decibel meter was an app on my phone that I calibrated as best as I could, and then I mounted it like where the nav screen is on the MX-5. Now, so as I said, the roofs up, the cars are the same. You have the same amounts of noises coming in. Now with the roofs down, there is a bigger difference. And it wasn't as noticeable in the readings from the decibel meter, which I'm a bit bummed about. But if you drive the RF top down at highway speeds, you will notice a little bit more of like wind clutter, like where the arch is behind the seats. So you have the rear arch of the fastback that stays. So, and that creates a bit of turbulence behind the seats. So that's something to keep in mind, but it's nothing that's really that irritating, if you ask me. Now, then we come to the final thing of this episode, the conclusion. Which car is better? Tell us, we want to know. Well, it's not that simple. Now, I'm going to talk about a few things in which these cars differ. Now, if you just look from the chassis perspective, like I said, the Softtop had the tendency to have body movement in the car while turning, which wasn't as confidence inspiring. Now it was more like you roll it and you were like directly thinking that the car wasn't able to handle it, which wasn't true. Now the RF on the other hand with the revised suspension is heaps better. This car still rolls a bit, but it gives you more of a confidence inspiring feeling instead of, oh no, the car can't handle it. So that's actually pretty good that Mazda did that. So in that perspective, on stock suspension, I'm gonna give this one to the RF. Now, is the Softtop bad? No, it's not bad. It's still a really good car. I have one, really, it's a good car. But from a perfect driver's perspective, the chassis setup with the suspension is a bit better on the RF. Sorry guys, it's just like that. Now, engine-wise, they're both the same. Which transmission should you go for? Well, if you like sporty driving, go with the manual. Sorry, always go for a manual. It's a lot more like involving and you can be a bit more aggressive with it. It's really fun to drive. That doesn't mean, like I said in the video, the automatic is not bad. It's a really good automatic. I'm really surprised by it. So if you want this car as a daily and to daily drive and you really do not want to be rolling gears all day long, go with the automatic. The car can be sporty with the automatic. The paddles are really nice. They have a really nice response time. They're not Ferrari, Lamborghini fast, but they're not like Mercedes Slushbox slow. Sorry, Mercedes. So that's actually something that I just want to give it to you. If you want this as a sports car, go with a manual, but if you want an automatic as a daily, just take it. It's a really good transmission, believe me. But now, the last thing then I want to talk about is the question of the day. Do you go for the retractable fastback or do you go for the Softtop MX-5? Now, it depends on what you want to do with your car. Now, the RF is the more safe option, as in this roof cannot be like sliced open. It's metal. So if you want this car as a daily car, I'm sorry, but I'm not even gonna tell you to buy a Softtop. If you want it as a daily, go with the RF, just because the roof is a lot safer and people can't use knives. But if you want a really easy, comfortable roof, like you want on a weekend car, like my car is, still go with the Softtop. It's really easy to use, it's really fast, you can just enjoy it more, and you have the added benefit of not having any more wind noise. But the RF isn't slow either. It's one of the fastest automatic roofs at the moment. But yeah, if you want a daily, pick the RF. If you want it as a fun car, go with the Softtop roof. But yeah, so you have a lot of thinking to do if you want to buy an RF after this video or a Softtop. So guys, but that's all I got time for this week. I hope you all enjoyed this comparison video of the Softtop and RF versions of the car. If you have any more questions that you want answered about these two cars, do put them in the comments below. I read all the comments and will answer your question in the best way I can. But that's all I got time for this week, guys. I'll see you guys next week. Subscribe for more of these two Miatas. And yeah, I'll see you guys next week. Have a good week.